to start us off with an introduction to himself and his books?
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Andy Roberts, or to use my pen name, Liam Hanson, and I'm the author of the Murder Squad thrillers set in Cardiff Bay and the beautiful Brecon Beacons National Park. So the lead character in my series of books is a police officer called DCI Bran Rees. And the other sort of main character, usually in my book, is Rees's nemesis, long-term nemesis, the gangster Billy Creed. And usually Rees and the team has to deal with Billy Creed and any manner of serial killers. There's usually a serial killer in the books. So the third book in the series, Isla's Missing, came out on Tuesday of this week. And it's a story of revenge. So a man called Arvel Baines was arrested and convicted of a murder he didn't commit. And Baines has spent 30 years in prison, stewing, plotting his revenge, basically. But he's been in prison for so long that the true killer, and he knows the identity of the true killer, actually dies of natural causes. But not to be undone, Baines decides to take his revenge out on that man's family, in particular his son, John Kosh. So when John Kosh wakes up on his kitchen floor after a party next to the body of his dead wife, he's got a bloody carving knife in his hand, and his daughter Isla is missing. Kosh calls Isla's name several times, and the only reply he gets is from a stranger stood at the other side of his kitchen. And the stranger tells him if he ever wants to see Isla again, alive, then he has to confess to the murder of his wife. And so the story of book 3 is about, does John Kosh do as he's told? Do the police make a mistake for the second time? And does Isla live or die? And that came out on Tuesday of this week.
Great. So I'm going to ask you Sam's question that's just come up on the stream before I ask you the ones from beforehand. She said it's an intriguing storyline. What initially sparked the idea of it for you?
An opening line. So I don't plot my books. I'm a pantser, as it's known to many. And so I always start with a line. It could be a line of dialogue. It could be a line of description. And it's just a line that won't go away. And I think I was saying in another interview just a week or so ago that Stephen King said that you don't need to keep a notepad with you to jot down your ideas. If it's a good enough idea, it'll stick around and you'll be compelled to write about it. So it just started off with the first line, which is something like, I don't have the book with me at the moment, but the first line of the book opens up to something like, Emlyn Kosh didn't mean to take the left-hand side of the other man's head off. He didn't mean to kill him at all. And that's all I had. That was the line that just wouldn't go away. And I wrote that line, and I followed it with a second, and I followed it with the third. And by that time, I start to see the character of Emlyn Kosh developing, and I just let Kosh do what he did. And so when I sat down to write the book, I had no idea that somebody was going to seek revenge on his family. I had no idea at that time that his son John Kosh existed, or what would happen to John Kosh. So I guess it was as much a surprise to me as it was to anybody who reads the book, really. I have no more idea than you what's on the next page until I write it.
I always love when people tell me that they completely pants a book, because they're always the ones that are full of like different layers and twists and things like that, and you always wonder how they've managed it.
Yeah, I think I'm slow in writing. I think for myself at least, it's a very inefficient way of writing, because I usually get going with that first sentence. I can write, say, 20,000 words, which will be around about 10 chapters or so. And I hit a wall because I have no idea until I get into the head of the character, the main character, the main sort of antagonist. Until I get into that character's head and I know them better, and I work out what would motivate them and so on. I'm stuck at that 20,000 word mark. But once I get into their head, then it's okay again. So that's what slows me down, and I think makes me quite an inefficient writer, really.
So we've got a few more people joining us. Lucy's watching. Andrew from Nottingham is watching. Leslie Lloyd said she was really keen to join, so hopefully she'll pop up soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some of the questions we got before we went live. So Meg Jolly, who don't know if you've read her book, she's got a series set in West Yorkshire that are really good. She's got quite a lot of questions for you. She wanted to know what your favourite book to write so far has been and why.
I enjoyed the third one, so the one that came out on Tuesday, because I can see myself getting better. The feedback I'm getting for people is that each book in the series has got better, and most people have commented on the third being their favourite. And so when I was writing it, and I got a bit further into the book, and I knew what was going on, I enjoyed it then, because I knew it was going to be a good one. Whereas the first one was a bit of a struggle, because I'd never written crime fiction before, and the second one was a struggle, because you always wonder, after you've written one book, do you have it in you to get another one out, or was the first one a fluke? So I felt a bit more under pressure with the first two books, but I enjoyed the writing of the third one more.
Well, Leslie Lloyd is quite a hard sell on a book. She's a bit like me. She's quite a tough reviewer. And she messaged me earlier in the week to tell me that she really liked book 3 a lot.
Yeah.
Yours.
Yeah.
It was marvelous. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. She's going to be an ARC reader for me for book 4. She sent me a message today asking when it was out. So probably September, I would imagine it'll be ready for ARC readers.
Excellent. Meg also wants to know what book you're working on now. So book 4. Can you tell us anything?
Right. So let me just have a think, because I've been writing it today. Actually,
away.
It's just so the new one. So I've got this attention deficit issue that I've had when I was a child as well. So sometimes when I lose my train of thought, I forget what I was doing. So I'm just trying to remember what I've been writing, writing today. Can we come back to that one in a second?
Yeah.
Although I am 30-something thousand words into it, so you think I would remember?
I think it's probably a tough one as well, because I'm thinking of the way you ended book 3. You can't sort of tell us too much about book 4, I wouldn't imagine, without giving away spoilers for book 3.
Yeah, now you've reminded me. Yeah. Yeah, so it's how can I say without giving anything away? So it's a book about corruption. So there's a link between the criminal underworld in Cardiff and a number of people who work in key positions within the city. And because of something that happens in book 3, that's likely to be exposed. And so book 4 is about what happens in that criminal underworld, what happens with that group of people who are influential people who are trying to hide their involvement in it. And obviously, DCI Reese then is following a series of murders that happen as a result of those things. And I can't say much more than that, really. But yes, it is closely related to happenings in book 3. And apologies for forgetting, because as I say, I was writing it about an hour or so ago.
No problem. Well, you don't know. You've just said yourself that you make it up as you go, so you don't know.
Yeah, I do make it up, and then as soon as I lose my train of thought, it's gone. It drives my wife nuts, because we can be having a conversation, a dog will bark, or something will happen. It'll take my train of thought for a sec, and I'm gone, and I just can't come back unless somebody prompts me. It's maddening.
Meg's other question was, which of your characters do you identify most with, and why?
I think this one partly answers Valerie Keogh's question as well. Probably Rhys, because Rhys, I think his character is loosely based on mine. Rhys doesn't like bureaucracy, and neither do I. I work in healthcare. There's plenty of bureaucracy there. And Rhys challenges authority, which I do sometimes when what we're being asked to do doesn't make sense. So I think Rhys has a fiery temper, but he's a good person at heart, and I'd like to think that I'm a good person too, and somebody that that you can rely on and trust. So I instilled those things in Rhys. He plays a guitar, I play a guitar. You know, he likes to roam around the mountains in Brecon, something that I do from time to time as well. So probably the person I most identify with is the lead character, DCI Rhys.
Yeah, that does cover Valerie's question as well.
Yeah.
Kim Francis asked before we went live if you're available on audio.
I don't know. So I'm signed to Bloodhound Books at the moment, so I'm at the mercy of a publisher. So as far as I understand it, I don't have a say in what happens to my books. I guess the decision to put an audio book out would depend on sales and what the publisher felt that they could recoup from the cost of producing an audio book. But I've now fulfilled that 3-book contract with Bloodhound, and I've made a decision and made it known to them that every other book in the series will be self-published. And so it's certainly something I've been thinking of recently, and I have been looking into it. So if people enjoy the series, and if enough people want the audiobook and I can manage to get it done, then it's certainly something that I would put time and effort into.
There are some members in the group that only read on audio.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I mean, I walk a lot, and I usually listen to podcasts. So I download podcasts, and I have been meaning to download books. And I listen to a lot of podcasts as I'm traveling back and forth the hospital as well. And again, I've been thinking about putting audiobooks on the phone and listening to those. So I can imagine that for some people it's much easier to do that. One of the consultants in work with me, one of the consultant anaesthetists, he's dyslexic, and he's had copies of each of my books. But I know, for him, it would be easier if he could just listen to it. So yeah, definitely, I'm receptive to that, and if I can get it done, I will. But I don't know what will happen with regard to the first 3 books. That'll be up to Bloodhound.
Fair enough. Lucy wants to know who or what inspired you to write, and why did you choose crime?
So it all started when my daughter was a toddler. I wrote a story for her, a little bedtime story, a little silly rhyming bedtime story called the Wibble Who Couldn't Wobble. and it was just written on a piece of paper that I later sort of typed and put on a memory stick. And then fast forward 8 years, I think it was a very wet summer holiday. And for whatever reason, my daughter asked me if we still had that story. And so I went rooting through my memory sticks and I came across it. And it just gave me an idea. And I said, well, what if we spend this summer holiday writing a book together? I'll tidy up the story, and you do the artwork for it, because she was very good at artwork, even as a 10-year-old. I just thought it would be a bit of fun, and we could self-publish it. I've got a copy in the corner if you want me just to hold it up. Not that it's published now,
yeah.
but
no, go for it.
So it was a bit of fun, father and daughter. We did that one wet summer holiday, and we put it on Amazon, and we sold hundreds of them on Amazon and in work. But in doing that, it made me look into publishing, self-publishing, and so from that I wrote a couple of 40,000 word children's books. And then I went on holiday one year and I picked up a book from somewhere and I threw it in the case. And when I got the other side and opened it up, it was a dark fantasy book by Patrick Rothfuss. It was called Name of the Wind. And it was very descriptive. It was about demons and so on. It was very descriptive. It was very poetic. And even as a child, I liked poetry. So I related to that book, and when I came home I thought, okay, let's have a go at writing something like that. So I sat down and I wrote a book that was similar to it, and again I self-published it. But I wanted to write a crime fiction book, but hadn't thought I was up to it beforehand. So all those things that I just mentioned to you, I guess I used as an apprenticeship to then write crime fiction. And the reason I chose crime fiction was I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do watch TV, it's usually crime fiction. So that's what I was interested in. So I did my apprenticeship in these other things, these sort of children's books. And when I felt I'd learned the craft a bit better, I sat down and attempted to write the first book. I put it out as a self-published book initially. On Amazon. It started to sell. I was getting feedback that people were enjoying it. And then lo and behold, on the same weekend, I got 2 messages from established crime authors. One was John Nichol, and the other one was Helen Durant. And both of them had read the book, and both of them had left 5-star reviews on Amazon, and they both contacted me and suggested that I send the manuscript to their publisher, which is what I did. And so within 2 weeks, I think it was, of the book being live on Amazon as a self-published entity, Bloodhound were offering me a contract for a 3-book series.
Excellent. Did you say that the children's one isn't available anymore? Would you make it available again, or?
I might, and I can't remember why I took it down. I think I was going to revamp it, and then I never got a chance to put it back up there. So apart from the one I wrote in the style of Patrick Rothfuss, the others, 3 or 4 of them, they're not available now. Occasionally, I do think about sort of sitting down and redoing those 40,000 word, those 2 40,000 word stories. They sort of for middle grade children, really. And they were like a fantasy book, part this world, part the other world, another world, supernatural element, about a highwayman who comes from the 1700s to a council estate in southeast London, looking for the reincarnation of the man who had him hanged. So I'm sure if I sat down and revamped it now, it would be a better book. But it's just it's just a case of trying to find the time to do that, and I don't know if I ever will. But they were fun to write when I did them, and as I say, they were part of an apprenticeship, really.
So Andrew from Nottingham is watching. He's doing well. He won a book yesterday. So
Yeah.
Andrew, you need to message Anne Coates with your address and things for that. He wants to know what book or author has really inspired you.
So I don't read much, and people in work are always surprised when they find out that I write, and they ask a similar question. I think because of that sort of attention sort of deficit I had as a child, I was a difficult child for my parents, for my mum in particular. I had no attention span. You had to exhaust me. So I'm not lying in saying that at the crack of dawn after breakfast, the front door would open. I'd be put on the doorstep and I'd go out and play on the mountains all day until it went dark, and I'd come back and I'd only be good for a bath and my tea, and I'd go to bed. And if I wasn't allowed out for whatever reason, I was just a nightmare to to be around, really. So as a child, I didn't develop much of a reading habit, although I was very, very good at reading. I was beyond my my reading age through school. But later in life, probably in my teens, I read a couple of books of Stephen King's. So Salem's Lot, The Stand, and I enjoyed those. But none of them sort of inspired me to sort of try to read everything that Stephen King did. And when I started writing crime, I thought I better start reading crime just to see what other authors are doing. And I bought lots and lots of books and had a look at them. And the one that the author that keeps my attention most is Stuart McBride. So I always say that Stuart McBride is my favourite author, and I have a bookcase just off to the right there full of Ian Rankin and Mark Billingham and Stuart McBride's hardbacks right across the top, and I've only read one or two of them. I've had a little flick through a few, but I've only read one or two of them. I just can't concentrate for that amount of time. I always feel like I should be doing something else. So when people say to me in answer or in response to the comment, I can't concentrate for long enough. Well, how do you sit down and write a book? It's because when I write a book, in my mind, I feel I'm working, and that's a worthwhile thing to do. Whereas if I sit down to read, I just feel like I'm cheating myself. I should be doing something else. I don't read the newspaper. I've tried and tried and tried over the years to sit and enjoy myself and just sit in the garden with a newspaper. I cannot do it. I have to be doing something.
Makes sense. Reading a book is about the only time I can sit still and do something.
Yeah, I wish I could. I listen to people like yourself and Donna Moffat and so on, people who are devouring books, just lost in in these worlds. And I wish, I'm envious. I wish I could do that, but I can't. I'll get a couple of chapters in, and I start to fidget, and I just know that I'm going to get up any minute and go off and do something.
Sam wants to know what you learned from writing book one that's helped moving forward.
Say it again, sorry.
Sam wants to know what you've learned from writing book one that's helped moving forward.
Keep it simple, I think. I'd learned, so when I wrote the middle grade books and then the sort of Patrick Rothfuss type book, I probably made the mistake that lots of authors do, in that I thought if I could find a big word instead of a small word, it was better. If I could find a very descriptive word, it was better, but it's not. I've learned that people don't want to trip over big words. They're not impressed by big words. They just want you to keep it simple. They just want you to tell the story and provide them with engaging characters. And so I think in each book, hopefully, my writing style has become more relaxed as I've developed. And in becoming more relaxed, I think it becomes more realistic.
So I've only read Isla's Missing so far of yours.
Yeah.
Started at book 3, not the most sensible plan.
No.
But, do you revisit characters? So would you go back, like if I read book 4, would I find out anything about how Isla was doing, for instance?
You might. There's a character in book 1 who plays a big part in book 1, and his name is Fishy. And at some point, Fishy's going to come back into the book because he's a character that a lot of people commented on. So there was this couple of sort of, I don't know what you would call them really, but basically this couple called Fishy and Onion. Now everybody in Wales, or most people in Wales, when I was growing up, had nicknames, and so there were people like Fishy and Onion, and I just took those nicknames to make the book realistic, and I applied them to 2 characters who sort of break into a warehouse basically at night looking for scrap metal or to do something for the local gangster, and they come across the body of a woman. And Fishy at some stage, yeah, will make another appearance. There's a detective inspector in the first book that people didn't like. They were meant not to like him. I wrote him that way, but he was unlikable. And he makes a sort of small appearance in the second book. So yeah, I do bring people back. So you will notice the same characters in the police station and out on the streets at times. And possibly Isla will get a mention at some stage in a future book. I don't have that many characters in my books. I tend to put people in the books if they need to be there. I don't sort of pad them out. I don't pad the books out with unnecessary characters. And so for that reason, I try to make them memorable. And yeah, so Isla might come back.
Nice. I lost my train of thought. Andrew wants to know, when you send a manuscript to your editor, how long does it take so that you can begin after the editor has played his part in your book process?
So that was when I send it to the editor. How long before I get it back, is it?
How long before that sort of steps taken place, and then you can start writing again?
So the way it's been with Bloodhound is they give me a date for publication, and that can be any date in the future. And then 4 months before that date, things start happening, and that starts with, so the first thing that happens is I have a date 4 months before publication date to send the book to the editor. My editor was a lady called Morgan Bailey, who was fantastic. I learned a lot of Morgan. So I send it to Morgan. She gets it for a couple of weeks. Then she sends it back. I think I get something like 14 days to make the changes that Morgan felt was necessary. And then I send it back, and Morgan keeps it for a few weeks again. And I think then it goes to proofreaders, and then it comes back to me after the ARC readers have seen it. And I get 5 days to make the final changes. So I think the time between me signing it off as the author and sending it back to the editor to be signed off the time between that and when it's published is probably only about 4 or 5 weeks, at which time I've started to write the next one. So I'm usually, sometimes I'm writing the next book while I'm waiting for the editor to send the previous book back for the edits to be done. So I'm always doing something. So I'm always either writing or editing. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer to the question. So I feel like location's really important in your books.
Yeah.
Like it's would you share photos of sort of locations that you've used and things?
Yeah, so I did. So they are available. I did share some a while ago when I started writing the books. So on the Facebook page, there are various places that are very special to Reese. So do you want me to tell the viewers why certain things are special?
Yeah.
Yeah. So before the books begin, before book one begins, probably 18 months before it begins, Reese is on honeymoon in Rome with his wife, and his wife Anwen is murdered. She's stabbed in a bag snatch that went wrong. And so when the books start, Reese is still picking up the pieces. It's all still very raw. And so there's a mountain in Brecon called Penavan, and Reese has scattered Anwen's ashes on Penavan. And Penavan features quite prominently in the first two books in particular. But there's also a church down in Cardiff Bay. It's more of a visitor centre now. It's called the Norwegian Church. Cardiff Bay used to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, ports in the world for sort of the exporting of coal. And there was a lot. There were a lot of Norwegian sailors there. The Norwegian sailors wanted to go somewhere to worship, so they built this place called the Norwegian Church. But it's also somewhere that Roald Dahl went, and so there are artifacts belonging to Roald Dahl there. And Reese's wife Anwen was a Roald Dahl fan, and so sometimes Reese goes there just to sort of remember times with Anwen. And also going back to Penavan, there is an obelisk, a monument to a 5-year-old boy who died on Penavan. I think it was in 1902, 1901. A little boy called Tommy Jones. So Tommy went missing. I managed to find his way most of the way up Penavan, and he perished. He was found after a search weeks and weeks later. So there's an obelisk there. So whenever Reese walks to the top of the mountain, he always pays a visit to Tommy Jones's obelisk on the way down. He usually gives it a little tap and tells the boy to sleep tight. And so I posted pictures of the obelisk and Cardiff Bay and the Norwegian Church and Penavan and so on my Facebook page, on the Liam Hanson author Facebook page. And when I was doing it at the time, I did get a lot of comments, people saying that it was quite nice to actually see for real what they'd read about in the book. And some of them, I think it was with the obelisk for Tommy Jones, they didn't realize it was real. They thought it was just something I'd put in the book, and they actually Googled the Tommy Jones Memorial, and then they read the story. So yeah.
I'm going to go and have to have a look. I'm imagining the Norwegian church, when I read about it, is looking very like a traditional Norwegian church. So
Right.
like they're quite well, they're like wooden stave churches.
Yeah.
In Norway.
Like clad in.
Not necessarily white, but they're kind of like wooden.
Yeah, and this one down in the bay is whitewashed, but there's a cafe. It's not a church as such now. It's a function room. It's a visitor centre. I think there's a cafe there. But sometimes characters from the book, not only Reese, but characters from the book, sometimes go there for various reasons. I think it features in the second book as well.
I think Sam's just shared the link to your page so that people can check it out.
Okay.
She says, other than Reese and yourself being similar, has anybody else inspired a character?
Yeah, I'm a people watcher, so I do take aspects of people's looks and personalities and use those to influence characters in my book. Reese's best friend, he's a farmer in Brecon. He's a man called Yanto. And I knew 100 Yantos when I was growing up. But nobody from the TV, nobody, I don't use people off the TV to inspire me. I use sort of real people, aspects of people's personalities in work. There is a nod. Is it in the in the first book, at the end of the first book, there is a nod to one of the consultant anaesthetists I was working with until he retired recently. And John, this particular consultant anaesthetist, he's actually in the book. I did phone him and ask him for his permission, first of all. I just wanted him to be on the intensive care unit when something happened, so I got his permission, and just as a little nod to him before he retired, really, he became a character in the book.
That's nice.
Right at the end.
Have any of the victims been people that you've known?
No, but I couldn't believe this. As soon as several of the nurses in work found out what I do as a sideline, they wanted to be a victim. So, and a couple of them wanted to be tortured first. They didn't just want to be killed, but they wanted to be a victim of the serial killer, and they wanted the serial killer to draw it out for a little while before they were actually killed. And they were quite happy for me to use their names, but I never did that. I refused to write them into my books. I thought it was a bit weird. But I still get asked, and I'm not kidding you, I still get asked. And I did mention one nurse by name, Lisa, in the same scene as John, the consultant anaesthetist. And I said, that's the most I'm doing, is just mentioning you by name. I'm certainly not going to have you tortured and killed. And other nurses were coming to me and saying, will you put me in the book? Kill me. And no.
I don't know about being a victim. I happily donated my name to Anne Coates and said I'd quite cheerfully be a villain.
Yeah.
In a book.
Yeah. I might, I might sort of run a competition at some point and say, for whatever, do you want to be somebody in the book? Do you want to be the new police officer who sort of, to join the team, or you could be a serial killer? But I think, it would be a bit weird if I started sort of killing off the people.
Oh, lost him. I wonder what happened there. Maybe the Wi-Fi in Wales isn't doing very well. Sam, that's a brilliant comment. I can't wait for him to come back and read it out. For those of you, while we're waiting for him to rejoin, hopefully, Andy's book, Isla's Missing, has only recently come out. Oh, he's back already. Look at that. Hi, you're back.
Okay, I'm just sorting out my camera again.
Grin GB says you got killed off yourself.
Yeah, no, that was spooky, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sam says she's got a list. I suspect of victims that she wants to kill off. Maybe she could trade, and she'll kill off your nurses, and you can have her list of victims.
Real people.
Who knows? Maybe I'm on the list.
Yeah.
After making a book in too many autocats.
Yeah, that detective inspector, that sort of horrible policeman I told you about from the first book, and he gets his comeuppance, and then he does show in the second book and get his comeuppance again, but he was loosely based on a consultant I didn't like. Very, very loosely based, but it was the same sort of personality. So yeah, I couldn't really have a go at that consultant. It was too close to home, really. But I thought, yeah, I'm gonna have your personality in the book, and I'm gonna rip it apart.
Apparently, I'm not on Sam's kill list, which is good to know. Don't know whether to be happy or sad. Sam wants to know if you research different aspects of your book as you write them.
Do I what? Sorry.
You research different aspects of your book as you write them.
I don't do much in the way of research. I do a little bit, but I remember reading somewhere or listening to a podcast with somebody who was far better at writing than I was, saying, and it might have been Stephen King again, saying that you should never research when you're writing. You should do your research before you do your writing. So weeks, months before you do your writing, so that you forget most of it. So when you come to write about a particular gun or a particular car or whatever, you just have a layperson's memory of it, so it doesn't read like a manual. Now, because I don't know what I'm going to be writing in a few weeks or a few months' time, because I don't plot, then I can't research either. So usually when I'm really stuck on something, I might Google it. So this week, earlier in the week, I did sort of go to Wikipedia or Google the parts of what we would traditionally call a bullet, because I wanted to know what it was made from, and found out that the bullet is only the sort of little bit at the end. The rest is the casing, and the casing is stuffed with some sort of accelerant and so on. And I haven't used all that information. I've just said the casing went here and the bullet went there. Had I not read it, I would have termed the whole thing a bullet. But I could only read about it there and then, because it was only there and then I knew that I had a bullet. Yeah, I think that's good advice to to not sit and read pages and pages and pages of something just as you're about to write about it. Otherwise, it's just going to come across as dry and look as though you're trying to impress people, and that's not what people want. They just want to know it was a bullet. A bit of it went here and a bit of it went there.
The bullet fact is something I weirdly didn't know, but maybe that's what you get for being born an army brat. Sam wants to know if you've got any rituals when you're writing, something that you do every time you sit down.
Well, I get up at 5 o'clock every morning to write. I write for an hour or so before going to work. I'm doing the intensive care unit by about 8 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I get up at 5. I write for a while, then get ready for work and go. So it's usually dark. It's usually cold, regardless of what time of year it is. Especially in Wales, 5 o'clock in the morning can be quite chilly. And so I used to, this makes me sound like an old man, but I used to have this cardigan, and I used to put a cardigan on and make myself a cappuccino and just sit with my cappuccino and write in my cardigan. But then it developed so many holes, my wife couldn't fix it, and I threw it away, so I don't have the cardigan anymore. So I just get up at 5 now and have my cappuccino. If I write later in the day, I do tend to burn some incense, an incense stick. I've got a couple of incense burners on my desk, and I've usually got something going in there. but no other rituals that I can think of. I don't sharpen pencils like Rodal, or smoke dozens of cigarettes or whatever as I'm preparing to write.
Well, Meg says hello, and your writing schedule's dedicated.
Say it again. I'm sorry, I keep asking it.
Meg Jolly says hello. Sorry, she's late. Your writing schedule is dedicated. She also says,
yeah.
She also says there's nothing wrong with a cardigan and a cuppa.
It had a big hole under the arm and one at the back as well. Yeah, my wife couldn't fix it.
I like the image of you writing at like 5 in the morning. I wouldn't get up then.
Yeah, I give myself an hour's lie-in on the weekend. So Saturday and Sunday I get up at 6. I consider that a lie-in. And then my wife lets me write until 10:30 on the weekend. And then 10:30 onwards, then I've got jobs to do.
Sam says she's got a blanket to wrap around her knees when she's interviewing. She's almost always cold, even with the heating on.
Yeah, it is when you sat still and off next to the window. So usually I'm the other side of my desk. It's just there was a glare from the glass earlier, and so I'm usually sat with my back to the window, and it does get a little bit sort of cold at that time in the morning.
And Meg says, don't the kids these days pay for clothes with holes in? Meg, you are never old enough to use a sentence such as don't the kids these days.
I missed that again, sorry.
Meg said, don't the kids these days pay for clothes with holes in?
Oh, kids these days don't know about clothes with holes in?
Oh, don't they pay for them? Don't they pay for clothes with holes in?
Oh, yes. I think it's the accent. It's me with my Welsh accent, and you with your accent, and I'm not quite picking up on everything that's being said. But yes, you buy a perfectly good pair of jeans these days, and before you know it, one of your children has taken the scissors to the knees. Yeah.
Right. So you're going to get the UK CBC fave questions now. What are your most memorable moments as an author?
Probably the first time somebody contacted me and said, liked your book and when is the next one due? I think that made it feel worthwhile. It made me feel as though I must have done something right if somebody had enjoyed it.
And my favorite question, would you make a graphic novel version of one of your books?
You'd have to tell me what that is first. I told you I'm rubbish.
Would you make a comic version of one of your books?
A comic version? I don't know. I've got no plans to, but if somebody came along and said they could do it, I'd listen to what they had to say. Yeah, I don't even know what it would look like.
There are some really good crime ones.
Yeah.
Paul McDermott's just bought out a comic book. Ian Rankin wrote one for DC Comics.
All right. Okay. Yeah. If anybody wants to give it a go, then it'll have to be one of my self-published ones, obviously, because I don't know what Bloodhound would think about anything being done with the 3 that are out at the moment. But yeah, if it's something that people want and there's somebody who can do it, I'm all ears.
Andrew wants to know if you're near Snowdonia.
No. So I'm in South Wales. So I'm just outside Cardiff. I'm probably a 20 or so minute drive away from Brecon, the features in the books. So Snowdonia is about a 3.5-4 hour drive from here. But it is a place that I visit probably every couple of years, and it's somewhere that my wife and I are talking about retiring to. So I'm hoping to give up work finish work at the hospital in 2 years' time, and so we're looking for places to settle down, and then I'm going to write full time, And there are villages, beautiful villages in North Wales, St Asaph and Bodfari, to mention two, and we have been sort of considering getting property there.
Nice. Sam wants to know how much you write in one go.
Not a lot, really. So if I write 1,000 words in whatever time period, then during one day, then I consider that a success. So sometimes I can write a bit more than 1,000. Sometimes it's a bit less. I think today I probably only did about 300 words, whereas yesterday I did about 1,300 words. And the reason I only did 300 words today is I'm unable to just write a dirty first draft. Everybody tells you that the first draft, you just put down what's in your head. You make no attempt to make it right yet. That comes when you go through and do your second draft and third draft and so on. Just get the story down, and I can't do that. So I have to make the chapters almost perfect for me before I can move on to the next. So I find myself editing and editing and editing. And it might be that chapter doesn't find its way into the final book. I've done that several times. I've spent days agonizing over a chapter, got it right, and then decided that it wasn't fit for the book later on. And so the reason I spent so much time sort of editing today was I didn't like what I'd written yesterday. There was a key scene. It was sort of very important to the book. It had to be in there so that the reader could understand what was happening and the motivation of certain characters. But when I wrote it yesterday and went back to it today, there's no way I could have left it as it was. And so as a consequence of working on it all day, and I really did work on it all day from 6 o'clock until about 6 a.m. until about 5 p.m., I wrote 300 words.
Wow. Is there any experts that you rely on when you're writing your books?
Yeah, so I think this is the way I look at it. When a person picks up a book or sits in front of the TV to watch something, they know to a certain extent they're going to have to suspend some level of belief so that the author can make it an enjoyable experience for them. And you're going to have to ask me that question again, because I thought about something and it's gone again.
Who are your experts that you rely on?
Yes. See, I told you, didn't I? And so I try to get the big things right. So I don't try to get all the small things right, because I think if you get all the small things right, it might come across as a policing manual. So I try to get the big things right. And in order to do that, there are certain people I've networked with over the last couple of years who can usually answer questions for me. So I have an ex-firearms officer from Swansea. I have an ex-detective sergeant from Bridgend. I have a mortuary technician. I have a CSI, a crime scene investigator. I had a police in the second book. One of the police officers has had a disciplinary hearing, but she's subject of a disciplinary hearing, and I wanted to get the main things in that right. So I had a police federation rep who told me how the room would be set up and who would be present and where it would be held. So I try, when I go for the big things, I try to get those right, and I do find people who can answer. And it is I think it's a sort of funny story I can tell you quickly if there's time, sort of related to that. Is that all right? So In the second book, The Serial Killer, and you know this from the start, the serial killer is a consultant anaesthetist, and he's using a paralyzing agent to kill his victims, basically. And I wanted, and I got that from case reports in America, where anaesthetists and critical care nurses had killed their spouses in the past using this paralyzing agent. And I wanted to know what, if anything, would turn up on a tox screen. So when I was in work one day, I emailed the mortuary. I thought I'll speak to the forensic pathologists in our mortuary. And so picture one of those coming in on a Monday morning to find an email asking them how to kill a woman with a paralyzing agent and not get caught through sort of tox screen interpretation. And they never answered. I never got an answer for it. So yeah.
Did you get an email inviting you to have a conversation with your boss?
Yeah, I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing from anybody.
Nice. Sam says Anne Coates has some interesting methods to figure out key details of a scene. Have you ever acted a scene out to check it works?
No, but my editor did. So in the first book, one of the police officers is stood in a hallway of a house, and there's somebody in front of her walking slowly towards her, threatening her. And she steps backwards, and I think I said, and she felt the handle of the door dig into her hip. And Morgan actually went to her own front door because she wasn't quite sure that that's where the door handle would catch a person. And so I haven't acted it out, but my editor has acted out a couple of things that I've written just to make sure that, yeah, they're factual.
Excellent. Apparently Anne once sat with a knife to her throat to see how it would work. It's commitment to writing a scene. We're really near the end of the chat. There's like 3 minutes left.
All right, let's go quickly.
I know. Do you want to finish us off with a kind of a recap of yourself and your books?
Yeah, so again, I'm Liam Hanson. I've got 3 books currently published by Bloodhound. The first one is now called The Other Her. The second one is called She's Next. And the third one, which came out on Tuesday, is called Isla's Missing. I'm currently writing the 4th book. That's probably going to be called Mama's Way, and you might know why it's called Mama's Way. And that hopefully will be out in the autumn of this year. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you do send me any messages, either by Messenger or through Facebook itself, I will always reply. Whenever I see it, I will send a reply. So many people have been very kind and supportive to me and answered the questions that I've asked of them. So, I promise to do the same. So if there's anything you want to ask me, then just drop me a line, and I will get back to you definitely.
Nice. Can people buy signed copies of your books from you?
Yes, I've just put an order in for a selection of all 3. So one thing to mention, if I can, recently my books underwent a change of cover and titles. It's something that the publisher and I agreed should happen. There have been a couple of technical issues with Amazon marrying up the right sort of metadata with the covers. If you do buy a paperback from Amazon, you will get the right one, but that's slowed down me getting the paperbacks ready to show you for for this interview, but they should be coming soon. So I generally charge, I think it's $9.99 for a signed copy, including postage and packaging. So that's cheaper than you'd be able to get an unsigned copy on Amazon anyway, unless you bought, you know, a few other things as well and got the free postage. So again, if you message me asking for a signed copy of one of them, then it's just $9.99, done through PayPal, basically.
Marvellous. Well, so all that's left to say is thank you.
Yeah, thank you to you as well, and thank you to everybody who's taken the time to sit down this evening and watch the interview and to ask me questions. So I appreciate it.